let's get this started. I have so many thoughts. Okay, yes, I have so many thoughts. For those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Kimoni. Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet, where I come down here and I honestly talk about whatever I want. And right now, what I feel like talking about so desperately is King of Wrath by Anna Huang. Now, oh my goodness, I haven't made content for a minute. This brought me out of hibernation because, oh my gosh, the last few days that I've been reading this, it has just been a whirlwind of emotions. I have felt so many things whilst reading this book, and I've been so desperate to have to talk about it with someone, but I don't know anyone in real life who's actually read this book. So I'm gonna dump all my thoughts on you guys, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. But let's get straight into it. I've literally just finished this book, literally just 15-30 minutes ago before I came here, set up my camera, sat down, because, yeah, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I really, really, really need to talk about this. But what is King of Wrath? Actually, in hindsight, gosh, let me tell you guys the actual backstory as to how I picked up this book, because oh my goodness. So it started off with a book talk recommendation. There were so many signs. But anywho, this was a book talk recommendations by I want to say a book talker. Would I? Yeah, she's a book talker and lifestyle creator, and she recommended this book, and I was like, oh wow, she recommended it, and the cover was really, really pretty. I didn't really note it to myself like, oh, I need to read this though, sort of thing. I don't generally take recommendations from TikTok or YouTube or anything. I sort of just go to stores, look at books, and whichever whichever one draws my attention or brings my appeal, that's the one I pick up. But I was in Waterstones with my friends the other day, and I saw this book, immediately recognized it, loved the cover, and then I just thought, oh, this book talker recommended it, let me pick it up. Let me tell you guys, I didn't even read the title, okay? I just picked it up and I thought to myself, let me take a chance on this, let me take this recommendation, let me read it. And then also, I feel like I've mentioned this, but the cover is absolutely gorgeous. Are you guys seeing this? The ring, the intricate details of the background of all the city, and then the gold and the red, and oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I ended up buying this book, and the reason why I'm laughing about there were so many signs. I mean, King of Wrath. I should have read that and thought to myself, the male lead is gonna be different. The male lead is gonna frustrate me. But just to give an intro as to what King of Wrath is about. So it's a romance. So it focuses on the romance between Dante Rosso and Vivienne Law, and I hope I'm saying those names right, by the way. And essentially what happens is Vivienne's father, what's it called? Is his name Simon? No, it's not Simon, is it? Francis. Francis is his name. Vivienne's father, Francis, he blackmails Dante into marrying his daughter Vivienne. And essentially the book focuses on their journey from just being a forcefully engaged couple to them falling in love and actually being in a genuine relationship. Wow. There are so many things that I need to say. How do I organize my thoughts, guys? I guess let me start with the male lead, since we're focusing on the King of Wrath part. Again, I should have seen this coming, but let me literally tell you what the blurb describes Dante as. He is ruthless, meticulous, and arrogant. So many signs. But I felt, how do I say this? I feel like the book, when you're reading the book, your experiences of can be different depending on what part you're reading. How will I say this? Maybe the last third of the book, where I was oh my gosh, I can understand why someone would like this. The relationship is actually quite nice to read. But in the first 2/3 of the book, it's messy. It's really, really messy, and it's really very awkward, not even awkward, like it's a toxic relationship is essentially what I'm trying to say. And I didn't like how a lot of the elements of the story were romanticized, especially the male lead. Like Dance, he's like, he's part of the old money crowd, he's a billionaire, he's ultra wealthy, and he is literally what the blurb describes him: ruthless, meticulous, arrogant. And I didn't like quite a few factors of his character. For one, I didn't like the way he treated Vivian. I felt like the way he treated Vivian was completely inappropriate, especially since she was also forcefully engaged to him. It's not like she chose it to be this way. And yet he takes out his anger on Francis, on Vivian at the start of their relationship, and that made me really uncomfortable. It made me really frustrated to see. Another thing that I don't like is how controlling he is, how like his disregard for people's emotions, essentially. So he constantly disregards Vivian's feelings. He constantly does things without like asking for like her prior consent. He's also, like I said, very controlling in her personal life, and he has a misplaced anger. That's another thing that I really didn't like about him. His anger management skills, they don't exist, guys. Like they don't exist at all. In the first 2/3 of the story, I just feel like, I don't know, he takes out his anger on whoever's easy to pick on, or like whoever he can like put in his place. So I'm going to describe this one scene where, like, for example, he has this business partner named Christian who does a lot of his like background information. He's sort of like his like spy sort of thing. I don't know how to describe him. He just does work for him, essentially. One of the key roles that he has is finding all the blackmail that Francis has on Dante's brother and trying to destroy it. But essentially, Christian is sort of like his like secret agent sort of person in Dante's life. And essentially, apparently, I don't know what happened. I think I missed reading this because it just came so out of the blue for me. I might have just missed it whilst reading because I was so distracted by all the other like nonsense Dante was doing throughout the entire story. But there's this one point where like I think Dante messed with Christian's like fiance or like girlfriend or whatever, and Christian gets revenge by, I don't know, he probably hacks into Vivian's phone and then texts her ex-boyfriend Heath to say that she's unhappy with the engagement, that she's so unhappy that she doesn't want to go through with this. And this leads to Heath going to Dante's house where Vivian is and trying to get her to break off the engagement. And you know how Dante reacts to all this? He doesn't fire Christian, he doesn't deal with him. In fact, Christian is still at his wedding, like with Vivian at the end of the story. He is. What he decides to do is that he rushes home. He punches Heath, Vivian's ex-boyfriend, in the face, and then he decides to ruin his IPO and ruin his company, and threatens him as well. And I was reading this just like, am I supposed to be turned on by this? Like, am I supposed to find this attractive? Like, like, was I supposed to be like hot or like endearing? Like, I'm not seeing the appeal here. I just found that really messed up because it's just like, if my fiance went and punched my ex-boyfriend who was just checking up on me, and he knows that Heath was just checking up on her, because like he said, it was Christian who told him that he was the one who texted, like, he's the one who messed with Heath, which led to that whole scenario happening. So Heath is only there bothering Vivian because of the person, Christian, the person he works with. And instead of, like, getting back at Christian, he decides to ruin Heath's life, which the logic behind that is so backwards. I think it's supposed to be played up as something attractive, as in, like, you know, he punched, like, Vivian's ex-boyfriend. It's supposed to show how much he, like, loves her. I don't see the appeal though, guys. I don't see the appeal. I just thought to myself, if my fiance ever did that, I would be fine. I wouldn't even care about my father. I would run so far, which is another thing like I just don't like about him. Like I said, he's so controlling of Vivian. Like, I remember, like, there was this one scene as well where, like, Vivian was just talking to, like, a mutual friend of theirs, Kai, and what he proceeds to do, he proceeds to take her away into a private space, basically say that he doesn't care, like, Vivian voice is like, oh, you've been mistreating me, oh, you've been ignoring me, oh, you don't care about me. And you know what this guy proceeds to do? Dante, our male lead, decides to do a little like trigger warning in case you're like sensitive to like sexual content or whatever. But to put it bluntly, he decides to finger her. Yeah. He decides to do that whilst telling her that no matter how he treats her or like how their engagement came to be, like he is, you know, she is his. Like she is his. Like she belongs to her. I mean, sorry, she belongs to him. And when I was reading that, I was just like, again, I think this is supposed to be played up to be attractive or to be like cute or whatever. But I can't lie, I just felt disgusted whilst reading that scene. I really did. And then that leads me on to another thing. This is about, okay, let's move on from like Dante, the male lead, to Vivian, the female lead. It's the way that like, if this actually happened in real life, like for example, those two scenarios and a lot of the other mistreatment that has been happening throughout like the first like two-thirds of the book, like if this happened in real life, obviously if your friend was the person in that situation, if your friend was Vivian, you'd be saying, get away, like run, like find a way out of this, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would you want to be around someone who is ruthless, meticulous, and arrogant? Why? Like, why would you want to be around someone like that? The thing is though, Vivian is written to be, how do I say? I think she lacks a backbone. Like, respectfully, she lacks a supportive network, I think, for one, and she lacks a backbone. And she's easily quite swayed by, like, Dante and his antics. Like, if we go back to, like, that scene, like, that private scene after he takes her away, after she's just making small talk to one of their mutual friends, and he goes pronouncing that, you know, she's his or whatever nonsense he keeps on speaking. She's written to be enjoying, like, the things that he's doing to her, and she's said to have, you know, like be a aroused spirit and everything. And I was reading that and I was just like, you know what, if this was a scene on its own, maybe I could see it, but given the context of why he's doing it, what's brought him to it, how he's been treating her, the circumstances as to which he's doing it, it's just like, no, what he's doing to her is messed up. Why is your first instinct after you've been mistreating this girl, after you, like, you know, when you're not even like, when you've been icing out this girl, when she's finally laughing and enjoying herself with somebody else, is to bring her into a private room, pronounce that she is, like, she is yours, and then also, like, put your, like, you know, engage in, like, sexual, like, you know what I'm saying, guys, like, right? Like, I just, if this was in real life, I can't have my friend came up to me and said that, I would consider that sexual assault. If I'm gonna be completely honest. Maybe that's just me though. Am I too sensitive, guys? Like, let me know. But I felt like that scene read very weird. And I didn't like how Vivian was written to be enjoying it. Like I said, I feel like a lot of what Dante does, he only gets away with in the story because Vivian is written to either enjoy it or to just, like, get over it. I feel like a lot of the time, she's the one making the first move, and I don't know. I felt like Vivian, to be fair, Vivian does do her fair share of trying to talk to Dante, but it's always shut down by Dante, by his antics, by his, like, rudeness, etc. And then Vivian, again, she doesn't really have a supportive network. Like, she has family. Now, to be fair, the relationship with her father and mother is sort of strained. Like, I can understand why she doesn't necessarily confide in them. But, for example, she has a sister, and she seems to be on relatively good terms. In the few times that Agnes, her sister, does show up in the narrative, they seem to be on good terms, you know? They seem to be, like, they're sisters. Like, they seem to be kikiing. They seem to be doing well. But, I don't know, Agnes, I don't know. Like, every single person other than Dante who's presented in the narrative, who's supposed to be close with Vivian and has supposed to have a healthy relationship with her, like, I just don't understand them. Like, I don't feel like we got enough of her interactions with, like, her friends, her sister Agnes, like her friends like Sloane and see, what's her name? You see, I'm forgetting characters because like the narrative mostly focuses on Vivian and Dante. There was Sloane, and then there was Isabel. Was it Isabella? Honestly, guys, I don't know, to be honest. I'm gonna go with Isabella. Oh yes, Isabella. Isabella is her name. And I don't know, Isabella, she reads kind of weird to me. She, even when like in the early signs of the relationship, just because this guy has money, she seems to be okay with her friend being iced out and mistreated by her partner. Sloane, we didn't really see as much of Sloane, to be honest. She seems to be more level-headed, but again, like, her character is so surface level. Like, these characters are very one-dimensional, and that's a problem because Agnes, Vivian, and Agnes, Isabella, and Sloane are supposed to be Vivian's safe space, but they're so one-dimensional and they don't come up enough in the narrative that I can't get a feel for them. Like, I don't know, who, like, they have an arc, they fit into an archetype, and that's it. So like Agnes is supposed to be like the responsible, level-headed sister. Isabella is supposed to be like very in the moment, very like the funny friend, the chill friend, the cool friend. And then Sloane is supposed to be again level-headed, she's responsible, and she's a lot more reasonable and well-adjusted, I will say. So I don't know, I felt like the connections, the friendships, the sisterhood that Vivian has with the other characters could have been more well explored. So those are my gripes with the novel, but I will say in the last third of the story, this happens after it all comes out to Vivian that like her father has been blackmailing Dante, and Dante almost like he sort of like semi ends things with her. That's when I can see like, again, I don't think it was supposed to be. I think I can see where it all ties together. I think Vivian's like, willingness to move past like all of Dante's transgressions in the first 2/3 is a result of her like family dynamic and her feeling quite oppressed and feeling quite like controlled in her home, which makes sense. And Dante's like iciness is like what's it called? His like, sort of like ruthlessness, his arrogance, sort of like it was taught to him by his grandfather. His parents were absent from his life. He had to take on like a fatherly role to his brother. What's his brother's name? Again, this is what I mean by all the side characters, they're not developed enough to the point that I'm forgetting their names. I think it was Lua. Or is it Lucas? I don't know, guys. It's his brother. He had to act as a father to his brother. So I just feel like the last third is where the book really kicks up without giving too much away. The last third was like when I really felt like, oh my gosh, like this book, like it's actually really nicely read. Like the relationship between Dante and Vivian, it actually is sort of like healthy in a way, I will say. I think once all the secrets were out, once all the blackmail was out, once everything was sort of like out of the air, I want Dante was the main person who I think was making this relationship toxic. Yes, the circumstances under which their relationship came together, the blackmail, the forced engagement, etc., it was not ideal. It still doesn't justify him like mistreating her, icing her out, just in general not being a very nice person. And it also doesn't justify his controlling behavior in her personal life. But I feel like once he like has a heart-to-heart conversation with his brother, and once he starts to understand his like emotions and work through that, that's when the story takes a turn, and it's actually quite like heartwarming to read in a way. I especially love like Vivian's like conflict resolution with her father Francis after finding out the blackmail, confronting him about the last few years, confronting him about how she's felt about their family since they got money, since they got rich, etc. Also confronting her mother. I think one thing I would have been more interested in though was like how, again, her relationship with her sister is so underdeveloped. Like they seem to be good, but like there were some hints there where I just felt to myself, this girl, like Agnes screams to me like people pleaser. She screams to me like older sister syndrome. And this is me talking as an older sister. Like she screams very much like still very much under her like parents like thumb, I will say. And I feel like I would have liked to see more of that and how that might have affected her relationship with Vivian. I feel it's a hard thing when your like parents are like disregarding you and disrespecting you, and like you're trying to like cut them off whilst you're like, your older sister still seems to be on relatively good terms with them. Like, I felt like I would have liked to see have seen some sort of like resolution. Not that they were ever fighting, but just some like, I wanted to see more of their relationship. We only hear about Agnes a couple of times, and she's the only one who understands what Vivian's sort of been through because they grew up together. So I would have liked to have seen like more heartfelt conversations between the two sisters. I think we only had one conversation and it was over the phone. So I would have liked to have seen more of that. I think the whole point of the first two-thirds of the story, I think it was supposed to purposely be made uncomfortable, and it was purposely supposed to portray a toxic relationship, all so that we could see like the healing and progression in the last third of the book. But the reason why I'm complaining about it is because, okay, I think one of the reasons why the first two-thirds I still feel like is a bit too toxic for my liking, or it just wasn't written very well in my opinion, was just because I think the smart really does like sort of like downgrade the severity of like the toxicity of the relationship. I think that's the words I'm looking for. I feel like the smart, the focus on like how much money Dante has as a billionaire, the romanticization of like old money. I also think like just the lack of like, a third voice. I will say like none of her friends or family are calling out Dant's shitty behavior. Not even her friends or sister. Like, they're not calling out his behavior openly. They're just sort of like, you know what, just take some time, take some time to get to know him, etc. Blah blah blah. You'll eventually figure it out. And it's just that I think those three things were the ones that make the first two-thirds of the book sort of insufferable in a way to read. The smart sort of like, it's always brought in to hide away like how toxic the relationship is. The smart, how good looking Danton is always brought out whenever he's being toxic, whenever he's being awful to Vivian. Even when Vivian is trying to confront him, she's always seems to be like distracted by the fact that he's so good looking, that he's so hot, etc. And then also, again, the romanticization of old money, being in these wealthy circles. I think it also takes. Sorry. Sorry, I've been talking too much. Let me actually have a drink of water. You can tell that I've really been wanting to talk about this. That water does not taste right. Anywho, the romanticization of old money sort of again takes away by, like, you cannot tell me if this was just an ordinary couple and they were like broke in NYC living in the Bronx or etc., that you guys would still think this was all like romantic, or just like sort of like this arrogance, this ruthlessness, this sort of like toxic behavior from a man would still be romantic if he was a broke man from the Bronx. Like, I guarantee you guys wouldn't think the same thing. Anywho, you guys aren't ready for that conversation. Let me move on. And then the third voice, again, the lack of like an alternate opinion. Everyone is so pro Dad and Vivian. When I was just thinking, in the first two-thirds of the book, like, I don't even understand. Like, that's the thing. I can understand why Dant falls in love with Vivian, but I don't understand how Vivian falls in love in Dant. Given the way that he treats her, you know what I'm saying? Like I just don't see like how she ended up falling in love with him. Like, sure, there are a few moments here and there where he's a bit more vulnerable, but all in all, he's quite a cold, mean person to her, if we're going to be completely honest, in the first two-thirds of the book. So I don't know how Vivian's love for him conspired. But it's just the lack of an alternate opinion. You can tell that the narrative is really, really pushing for you to fall in love with like these two relationships. And I did fall in love in the last third, when like a lot of the issues, a lot of the trauma, well, trauma always stays with us, but a lot of the healing happened, you know what I'm saying? A lot of the healing happened. They started their relationship afresh. But I just can't get behind the first two-thirds. Like, I can see the appeal of this book. Trust me, I can. Like I said, the last third is amazing, and I could actually feel like I actually felt like quite like heartfelt when it came to the relationship in the last third. You know, Vivian is also quite a nice main character. I really liked her character. I think she was my favorite character in the book, which kind of shocks me, to be honest, because in a lot of books, I can't lie, the main character doesn't tend to be my favorite, but she was definitely like the star of the show for me. Yeah, I would just say that the first two thirds, like, I don't know, I was screaming in my seat while reading this book. I was so frustrated, especially at Dante. Oh my gosh, the toxicity. Again, like, I don't think it would have been as much of a problem if the narrative really called him out on his like nonsense, but it didn't really in the first two thirds. Yes, Vivian tried to speak up and say, okay, but you're treating me like this, but again, the smut, the old money, it sort of took away from her points. Anyway, guys, I hope what I'm trying to say is coming across. If I had to rate this book, I don't think it was bad. I think if throughout like most of the time when I was reading this book, I thought to myself, this is definitely like 4 out of 10, like 5 out of 10 at most. But like after reading the last third, I would say like 6 out of 10 I think would be a good score for it. I just felt like the ending was amazing and it tied up a lot of things really well. I just didn't like that the narrative was really trying to push Dante when he was toxic as attractive. Like, we all know why he's considered, like, why his toxic behavior can be read as attractive. It's because he's reading as good looking and he's rich. And those are the only reasons why you guys stand behind him. At least in the first, like, 2/3 of the narrative. The last third, he's actually quite sweet. He's quite nice. You know, I warmed up to him a bit, but I did feel very much like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the toxicity in the first 2/3 could have been addressed a lot better. But those are just my thoughts, and that's my little rant. Thanks so much for sticking around if you're still here. Either way, I think this was a nice like break to read. I've been reading quite like, how do I say, very deep like trauma stories lately. So like before this, the last 3 books that I read before this book was Pachinko, which focuses on like you know, Japanese colonization in Korea, and like it follows like the sort of like narrative of this Korean family over multiple generations, you know, migrating to Japan and then eventually like setting up in Japan, etc., and looking at all their stories. Then I read Half a Yellow Sun, which was based in the Biafra War. Need I say more? It was a very like, oh, it really did. It was the book I think that made me cry the most. It was so, yeah, some very like deep themes. And then next after that was Breathless Night, which was based on the Tamil, like, you know, it was based on like the Tamil genocide in Sri Lanka, and yeah, that was also really hard to read. So I'm glad either way, even if I didn't, I feel like it was just a nice break. Like, I've been reading very like deep, very troublesome stories about war, conflict, a lot of historical fiction. So just being able to like switch off my brain, well, not completely switch off my brain. I didn't switch off my brain to the point where I was convinced that all this like I was convinced that this relationship was cute or the smut was cute given the circumstances under which the smut was happening. But I did switch off my brain enough where I could just sit and sort of like enjoy reading a book. Not that I didn't enjoy reading all the other books, they were great. I should actually make a video. I should make like a 30-minute video or whatever, like deep dive into those books because they were really good. But yeah, this one was, it was just a nice break. It was a nice break to read something that's, you know, different. Let me just describe it as that. It was different. It was a different book. It was, I don't know, it was funny just like ranting about it to myself in my room whilst I was reading it, trying to make sense of what was going on. But yeah, it was a decent read, guys. It was an okay read. Definitely not as good as I feel like a lot of people are making it out to be. It was my first book talk recommendation though, so like I feel like Book Talk has a reputation for not having the best like book recommendations. Again, there were so many signs. King of Wrath, Ruthless, Meticulous, Arrogant, Book Talk. I'm not trying to insult anyone, guys. I'm just there were so many signs. There were so many signs. But anyway, that's it from me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you thought about this book, whether you loved it, whether you hated it, whether you're like me, who was just like in the middle or so. And let me know if you guys would like to see more of these types of videos, more of these sort of like deep dives into the books I read. And I'm also welcome to any recommendations. Well, let me not lie, I might not take them, but you know, I like books. So like, if you have any recommendations, if you have any books that you just want to like comment or chat about, even if they're like completely unrelated to this, like let me know. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.